So this workshop's basically like a DIY workshop for a rhythm section. So coming across like an upright bass is really expensive. Coming across like a full drum kit is a pretty expensive thing, which you could really put together for relatively cheap. Putting together a washtub bass is the next thing that I was going to talk about today. The washtub bass setup is really pretty simple. This is an old washtub that my grandfather gave me. It's from like the 1940s. These are pretty easy to find even today at a hardware store, like a True Value, anything like that. This in particular is a 12-gallon tub. It gives a pretty good sound, I think, because it's an older metal, but 17-gallon tubs that are made today are a better idea if you're going to build one out of a new tub, because the metals are a little thinner and a little tinier. This serves me well just because it's a good metal. What you need for this is a 12 or 17-gallon tub, a stick, and a 6.5-foot piece of nylon string. You can get all this at any hardware store. Okay, this is a nylon string. This one is 7/16 of an inch in diameter. I like that one. I've seen people use a lot bigger. You can also use cotton string. You can use something called parachute cord. You can use weed whacker strings from an or you can use weed whacker string. You could use weed whacker strings from an upright bass setup. I like the nylon string in particular. It won't cut your hands up as much as anything else, so you can really cut your hands up. This here is just a standard gardening tool handle that you could use on a hoe. You could use it on really anything that you're going to put a handle on, any type of shovel. When I got this, the end was made to fit inside something in order to bind it together with a screw. So, for the guts of this system, I basically use an eye bolt, which looks like this at the top. It has an eye on top there. And I use, let's get that out of here so it's a little more visible. I was playing this today at the festival, so I have it all set up. Okay, so an eye bolt basically looks like that. All the guts here will cost you about 50 cents total, maybe $1. Use an eye bolt with a 1/4 inch diameter. Use a nut for the top, a fender washer for the top, a rubber fender washer here, and for the bottom, use another fender washer that's metal and a fender washer that's rubber. The rubber fender washers here are really important so that you don't get too much of a tinny sound from changing the pitch, the tone, the note as you're playing the washtub bass. So basically when I started, I decided everything would be a 1/4 inch. The 1/4 inch diameter is what's important for the drill bit you use. You basically start by just drilling a hole in the tub, dead in the center. When you drill a hole in the tub, use a 1/4 inch bit, take it straight through. Once you take that straight through and you have all your components, you can start assembling it. So the first thing you do for this side is you assemble with just a general nut. It doesn't have to be a lock nut. And you tighten it all the way up to the eye bolt here. That provides a flat surface for the fender washer to sit on. So you have the eye bolt assembled with the lock nut here. The next step is a 1/4 inch diameter fender washer. Below that is a 1/4 inch diameter rubber fender washer. So you have all that through the 1/4 inch hole that we drilled. And on this side, you have the same setup basically, with one exception. You don't have the eye bolt because this end is just going to slide straight through. Here you have a 1/4 inch rubber washer to prevent from too much abrasiveness there from the metal. A 1/4 inch metal washer and a lock nut. The lock nut is going to keep this from loosening. Once you get the lock nut on, it's a silicone product on the inside of the nut that you can't reverse it the opposite way once it's on, unless you really wrench on it and strip the screw. So once that's set up, then you're ready to work with the stick. So, like I said, you have 6 feet to 6.5 feet of string, and then you have a stick here. So you can tie your string here, and we're going to work with the stick. So what you do is you start thinking about how I'm going to attach the stick to it. There's multiple ways to do it. I think this is the best way in particular. At the bottom of the stick, I cut the head off. If it's pointed anyway, you need it to be very flat. Once it's flat, you make a groove here. You could do it with like a file. You could just do it with, I did mine basically with a small wedge. Just eventually beat it down to the point where I could fit it on the edge of the tub. So you might want to make some groove in diameter to where it fits on the edge of the tub. Flat here with a wood saw will work. You want to think about the height of the stick. Like if you were building one, you would or you 5 foot tall, 5'2" or something.
Yeah, 5 foot and what?
5 foot
1.
5 foot 1. Okay, so you might want it to be a little lower than this, just so you didn't have to reach up too high. So if this is parallel to the edge of the tub, the groove, you would want the hole up here to be perpendicular to the tub. So you would drill a 1/4 inch hole or a 3/8 inch hole, whatever your, whatever the diameter of the string is, through the handle up top. So once you have this set up, you tie a knot off up here and you tie it off down there to your liking. This is a little tight for me right now. I would probably have to anchor this up onto something for it to be comfortable with where I could play it. So once we have this set up down here together, and you have the stick ready, which by placing a groove down here and a perpendicular hole up there, you're just able to fit the string to the tub. Now you can begin playing. So depending on the surface, the tub flat or the tub up in the air, off the ground, the sounds are going to resonate differently. So the concrete, for some reason, I'd have the tub flat, but in here, the tub would be a little quiet if I had the tub flat. So I would usually just place a shoe under the edge of it. I've seen people use the heads of plungers flipped upside down just to get the tub off the ground so the sound would resonate out from underneath. Because on the wood, it seems to really absorb the sound. Anchored off the ground, you can kind of get a little more sound out of it. So since we have one of these today, we can all try it, but we can't all play it together at once. Up top, I'd usually just use a rag. You could use this as a capo, kind of. You don't want to really slide too much up here because you'll give yourself a really bad rope burn on your hand. I learned that the hard way from playing it pretty often when I first started playing Washtub bass. So if you have this tied off up top, you can really slide up and down a lot. You can do runs on it almost like you would on an upright bass too. People on an upright bass would set up kind of, bass like with like a 4-finger setup here where you could slide up and down and do scales on the strings. So if you have a rag here, you're almost stable enough to do runs of certain kinds. So then you can just really get a lot of different sounds out of this thing. So on the floor, it doesn't give quite the sound I'd like it to do. Take my shoe off.
So you're also moving the stick as you do it?
Yeah. So moving your hand up and down and moving the stick, depending on what you want to play. If you want to play scales in key of C, you could probably figure out by ear a different way to play it. I usually like to think of like root 3rd, 5th, just because it's like a really simple way to play bass. I usually slide something like. So find your root and then.
Oh wait, so the stick moving is just so you can make it tight when you move your hand up or something?
Yeah, the stick can tighten it, and so can usually a higher octave, I guess, would be sliding down the stick, but staying within tension, maybe in the same octave, would be moving the stick back and forth.